It's so good to see you. Can you hear me okay? They kind of hooked me up with this kind of like boy band gadget. And I went through some like awkward moments of them strapping it to me. I thought they would kind of hand it to me and I put it on myself, but they did it to me. It was kind of close and personal, but I made it. And I really wanted to make sure that you could hear me. I feel like too with the masks, it's just so hard. And I get kind of like claustrophobic in here. So I just thought this might make it easier. So let me kind of do a few things here and we're gonna get rolling. So please keep your mask on at all times since we're here on school property, you need to do that. Exits, they're located up here and also down here. I've actually used these before, they work, okay? This will be recorded, so don't say anything about your boss while you're here. Introductions, I am Nate Reuter. I'm an instructional technology coach here. I've been a classroom teacher in science for the past 18 years. And then last year, when everything got really crazy with the technology, I was hired as an instructional technology coach. And largely my role is kind of like a marriage counselor between technology and the teachers. I try to keep the love there. And a lot of times there's bad moments, but I try to bring everyone together. A little bit about me too. I'm also a parent. I have 5 little Rooter Raiders. Actually, they're big Rooter Raiders, many of them now. I have one grad, one here at the high school, Minerva, JP, and then also at Brooks Hill. So I have 4 buildings, which means a tremendous amount of emails, and I read most of them. Then I kind of want to do some introductions going down this way. We can start with Ms. Russell.
Hi, I'm Liz Russell. I'm one of the social workers. Oh, thank you. One of the social workers. I'm the substance abuse prevention social worker, so I get to work in all of the secondary and sometimes the elementary school buildings. And I have 2 teenagers, so I've had my fair, well, they're young adults now, but I've lived through some digital drama, so glad to be here tonight.
Good evening, I'm Bob Clark. I'm the principal here at the high school. I have 3 teenagers, and they've suffered my knowledge of digital drama. So they got their phones last compared to their friends, and we still prevent them from going in the bathroom and things like that with them. So we can talk more about that later, I'm sure.
Good evening, everybody. Dominic Monticelli, principal Minerva DeLand. I have 3 children of my own and 420 at Minerva DeLand. You know, this is a conversation that's really important, and I appreciate everybody being here. It takes a village in general, especially when it comes to learning and growing through the digital age. So looking forward to a healthy conversation.
Hello, my name is Tegan Bai. I'm 14 years old and I go to Minerva DeLand, and I definitely have had a lot of experiences with social media, good and bad, so let's talk about it.
Hi, I'm Lauren Murphy. I'm 14 and I go to Minerva DeLand, and I've also had a lot of experiences with social media.
Thank you so much, all of you, for being here, especially you, the students. That's what grounds this and keeps us focused on why we're really here. And a little bit more about the why of this. Mr. Monticelli, would you talk a little bit more about the why? You and I have talked, sorry to put you on the spot, but you and I have had such great conversations about this, about why this is important, why we're doing this.
Yeah, I think we all know what you're here because you understand the why. It's screens and social media is having such a profound impact on society, not just our teens, but our adults. And understanding what it is and how to manage it in a healthy manner, I think, is the defining challenge we have as educators, as parents, and it's a community and village necessity that we come to the table and have these conversations. So in my building, anyway, I'd say 80% of the social issues that we deal with involve social media, whether the catalyst or, making it worse. So we're dealing with it every day. Our students are dealing with it every day. If you look at any data, You know, the rise in anxiety and depression of teens is directly correlated with the advent of social media. And we as parents, I'm guilty as well. I'm home checking emails too much and checking other stuff too much. So it's an attractive challenge for all of us. And I think the more we can talk about it, learn about it, and grow through it, the better. As a parent, I try to just say, put your phone away, give me the phone. But taking it away doesn't help me or them learn how to manage it in a healthy manner. So that's my continuous growth process, and I don't have all the answers. So looking forward to, digging in together.
And I kind of really want you to be thinking about that, like the why is really important here. When you think about adolescence, hearken back, if you will, if you dare, to your own adolescence, our own adolescence. It was a turbulent time. And if it's okay, maybe I'll be the first one. I did some unwise things. And I think now, like with social media, those unwise things, it's now like putting like gallons of gas on it with enriched uranium, and it just explodes. And how do we help with that so things don't get so out of hand? That's why we're really interested in working together to do that. And in many ways, I don't know that we have all the answers because we didn't go through this digital experience, but I think the effort of this is to help build like that language around this and some of the thinking around this. So the what is going to be some curriculum that we have from Common Sense Education. This is a wonderful site. I don't know have you ever been there? Who's been there? Common Sense. Yeah. I don't know if I'm going to put you on the spot. Okay, people are talking to us. So. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, the movie reviews. They're awesome because you're kind of like, oh, yeah, I didn't know about that in there. So, or sometimes you're like, this is great. It's really fantastic for movie reviews. They also have a very strong digital citizenship component to it too. So the last part, the how, expect to be active. So in a little bit, you're going to be doing stuff and talking with people, which will be more fun. All right, I'm going to keep going. I'm setting some stuff up here. First off, in your handout, you'll notice there's a QR code. I know for me, whenever I'm at something like this, I always have questions. I'm kind of that guy who always has questions. It was really hard being my mom when I was a little kid. She'd always pawn me off on my grandfather. And we realized you're going to have questions. So all you have to do is you can scan this with your phone. Like if you turn on your camera, it will bring you to this Padlet. And you can see the Padlet on the side here. And your questions will go up there. The reason we're doing this is so the panelists can see them. And it kind of gives us a sense of like what the mood is out there. So as questions come up, feel free to use that as we progress through this. This is just for the end, if you could give us some feedback. Kind of same deal, you scan it with your phone. This is what it will look like, just to be like really clear with you. All you got to do is when you get onto your phone, you just press this like little plus sign and just start typing in. If you want to put your name, you can, but we really don't expect you to. Sometimes it's more comfortable not to. Unless you're creating digital drama. Okay, we're going to talk about anonymity in a moment. I also thought this would be cool too, because you can look at other questions to kind of see what people are thinking. If you see another question that's really important to you, you can click the heart thing, because then for us, we can kind of know, wow, like everyone wants to make sure that this gets addressed. Okay, it's kind of cool. This is kind of like borrowing a little bit from, like, I don't know if you've done a lot of virtual learning. With the pandemic, like where there's a presentation, but on the side, there's kind of a chat with people asking questions. It's kind of like that. All right, last thing, you have 3 handouts. You have this one, dealing with digital drama. That's the one that you're really going to use for this session. Then, help kids fight cyberbullying and other mean online behavior. That's like the stapled handout you have. There's some really cool stuff in there. Like it gets really specific about like specific behaviors online, which I was kind of like, oh, yeah, I didn't really know about that. But then it goes into really good detail about like, well, how do you handle it? Like griefing, do you know about griefing? Oh, it's in there. You can look it up, okay? It will talk about griefing. Then this one I thought was really cool too, the family media agreement. There's some really specific questions in here about like sitting down with your children and being like, hey, we kind of need to have some understandings and like expectations as a family. Feel free to modify it. By no means does it like fit everyone. And that's kind of like something I kind of want to talk about in general, is parenting is a very personal thing. And anything that I say up here or the rest of us say, we are kind of doing this with you. We are not telling you what to do. What I hope is like you can kind of feel comfortable with that and maybe even have a little bit of vulnerability. When I've done this before with parents, I'll kind of pitch out like a question like, well, how much screen time is too much? And people do this. What are they doing? What are they waiting for? Someone else is to be like the guinea pig, because you don't want to be that person. You're kind of like, yeah, I think, once you get past 20 hours, I think that's too much. You don't want to be like the crazy parent or something like that. So realize that we're all kind of like norming our expectations in here a lot. And there's some vulnerabilities with that. So I hope you feel comfortable kind of realizing that like maybe we're kind of figuring things out. It's a little bit like the elementary school play where you're like looking at everyone else being like, am I doing the right thing? Part of it is kind of figuring that out, but then also realizing too that we're kind of figuring it out for ourselves too. All right, so one last thing to kind of frame things. How do I build trust with my child? This is one of the questions that came through as like people were registering. And again, this to kind of ground things here a little bit. It's hard, it's really hard being a parent. It's one of the hardest things, it's one of the most beautiful things. And what I'd offer to you as we kind of progress through this is the moments where I feel like I'm doing my best, kind of muddling through this process, is remembering the moment my child was born. Here was this brand new baby who I'd never met, and I loved this individual infinitely. I would take a bullet for him, and I'm like, where does that come from? It's amazing. And I think sometimes when we get kind of caught up in the thick of things and we're with our kids and they're teenagers now and where's like the cute little child I used to love, whatever, we realize that we still love them. And I hope you can always remember that. That's one. Number two, if I can, again, I'm offering suggestions, is to kind of realize too that our relationship with our children when they're teens kind of changes. Like when my kids were little, they're kind of like little ducklings and they just kind of like follow us around. And I kind of feel like I'm in the lead and they just follow. But I feel like that relationship changed a lot when they were in teens, where like now we are walking side by side, kind of figuring it out together. And that's hard if you're used to like being like the mother or dad, the duckling. Realizing that like we're gonna go somewhere and we're gonna do it together. But now, instead of me telling you where to go, I'm going to ask you, well, why do you want to go there? Is that the best idea? How can we do this together? I want to make sure you're safe. How are you going to make sure you're safe? And I think if we do those two things, that love and that kind of collaborative coaching model, I think we get a little bit closer to getting it right. So I just kind of want you to have that. And I think that comes back to this question, how do you build that trust? All right, so this is going to be your time when you talk now. You're going to be talking with people nearby, so I hope you're near someone. What I'd like you to do right now is kind of talk with someone nearby. Does your kid sometimes seem upset after reading text or social media? What causes the drama? Do you experience drama online? What do you do if they come to you for support? What's the biggest challenge when it comes to digital drama? So take a moment, like a few minutes here. We'll see how things go here. I'll partner you up if you don't have a partner. Go for it. Take a few minutes. go ahead and take one more minute, just one more minute. I'm going to keep rolling here. I'm not going to share out right now, but it was wonderful listening to you. I think something that's so exciting is just like one that's so grounding, because you're kind of like, oh, I'm not alone. Okay, that's kind of like the biggie for this, is just realizing that you're not alone. And we're all kind of trying to figure this out. So what I'd like to do right now is show you a video here, like some teen voices. Lauren and Tegan are going to contribute to after this. We already talked about it. You ready? Not yet. Watch the video. Like, what's the student perspective on this? What are they experiencing? Okay.
People fight over text all the time. You know, digital drama is a thing.
There are ways to avoid digital drama, but I think it's mainly inevitable.
You need to get ready to have something be said that maybe you won't like.
On social media, everything social-wise gets a bit more intense. It just causes so much unnecessary drama, I would say.
Sometimes I need to take a break from it, because sometimes it's too much for me. And then if there's drama going on, I'll set it aside.
And even though there are steps that we can take to reduce it, it's not going to end.
You can say anything over text, which you would never actually say in real life.
It's so much easier to fight with your friend over the phone than it is to fight with your friend in person. That's a new thing.
People can just hide behind, certain accounts and certain places on social media and just say whatever they want to say. We kind of have this disconnect that I think sometimes social media can cause, where it develops almost a tolerance for a lack of empathy.
It's really important to think about how other people are going to take it, because whatever comment you make could be seen by potentially thousands or millions of people. Now more than ever, where somebody makes a rude comment and they get put on blast for it.
You don't see the other person's reactions, so you just keep on going. You don't know if the person is sad. You don't know if they're angry. You don't know what they're thinking about you.
Social media can turn into sort of a negative space when there's a lot of anonymous posting. No one else knows who that person is, so it creates a lot of tension and drama within friend groups.
In the comment sections of posts that are viral or popular, I'll see someone voicing an opinion, and all of a sudden there'll be a thread of even hundreds of comments, people just arguing and not even knowing each other.
You could get insulted very easily, on your appearance, on your just anything that you say, anything that you put out onto the internet.
Something so small can escalate to something so big, and as it escalates, the topic can completely change to something that's really big.
People that I know actually worry about how many followers they have compared to other people, if they're not getting as many messages.
When I see the people around me getting into drama on social media, kind of makes me not want to be on social media, and it just seems easier to not be a part of that.
I have a couple friends who are very close, but they fight a lot. I'll get screenshots of their conversation from both of the people just being upset and sending long paragraphs about how upset they are. And instead of talking to each other about it in person, I've suggested to both of them multiple times.
I would say I'm more comfortable talking face to face because like on social media, it's hard to like communicate like a sense of realness and like emotions.
The best way to deal with digital drama is to leave what's happening. Maybe it's a group chat that you're in, just to leave that, because the more that people talk about it, the more that people are going to think about it, and the more you might get into it and you might say more things.
It is really easy to get your feelings hurt, but you know, you just gotta like, it's just kind of, they're just hiding behind a screen basically.
I think the best way to deal with digital drama and help mediate it is, first of all, I always suggest talking in person because that's always easier.
Avoiding confrontation is something that I'm trying to be aware that I don't do. A way that I can just disassociate myself from the negativity is to just not respond.
What are some things that maybe you've experienced similar to that, and how have you handled it?
From personal experience, there's been like a lot that people do, but mainly people post things and they don't really see or how many people are viewing it, or you don't know who's taking screenshots or who's screen recording, or like who they're showing or who they're talking to about it. So like people post things and they don't even think twice, and then they just hurt a lot of people's feelings without even like realizing it.
Yeah, and I feel like when you're like really angry, it kind of just, you just like, it's an emotional response and you can't really take back what you said, so it's harder to like take it back.
Thank you. Anything else? How about you? What are some things that are kind of resonating with you? Like, what are some things that maybe either you saw as an experience that you're kind of like, yeah, I'm there, I've experienced that. What's kind of resonating with you? What did you hear? Yeah, what do you got?
I just sense from them all that you're dealing with constant noise. And I just feel sort of heavy and sad that we pass this to our youth, because that's a lot to deal with.
It is. And I love how you said that. Like a bunch of things you said there, like the world that, like we pass this on to them, like the world that they know is the world that we've kind of in a way have given them, which, for me definitely gives like this sense of urgency of kind of like, I need to help, kind of turn this as much as I can. But yeah, just kind of like this static. And when you think about adolescence, it's a time of like hypervigilance. Like, like one of my kids, I'm not gonna mention names, but he would walk into a room and very quickly he would start like looking around to kind of see what the social landscape is and who's kind of noticing in him and stuff like that. And well, now you amplify that with social media. What else is kind of resonating with you? Are you thinking about? You got something, Dan?
Yeah, a couple of things, Nate. Drama was mentioned by almost every kid up there, right? And there's an overall negative feeling of everyone that's talking about social media, and I'm sure this is cherry picked to a certain degree, but very negative overall, but revolving around drama, and that kids might not necessarily understand yet that drama is somewhat a choice to participate in. But also kind of the larger picture of, not sure the kids understand that like this is not a unique problem to them. Like this is everybody on social media, adults, kids, everybody feels
Yes.
the same things and sees the same things.
A few things you said there. One about the cherry picking. It's kind of interesting because most of the videos Common Sense has, there's usually kind of like, yes, negative but positive. And this one didn't have quite as much of the positive because there are some like real positives of social media, like that sense of connectedness. Wait, what was the other thing you talked about? I'm losing it. What was the second? Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's been really interesting how many people I've talked to about this as parents. And parents are kind of like, yeah, you know, I need help with this too. I'm feeling this, like profoundly feeling this. Anyone else want to share kind of maybe some of the things that resonate? Yeah. 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 How's it? It would. And like bit by bit, we're working on trickling this in throughout the district, K through 12. So yeah. And it might not necessarily be this video. It could be this video, but it's videos like this that are, you know, like developmentally appropriate for different ages. This is definitely more like adolescent.
I would add to that, Nate. Sorry to jump in, but
thank you.
I mean, Tegan and Lauren could tell you from before school started with orientation, we started with our messaging with the 9th graders around digital citizenship and how important this is. I'm sure they're all kind of tired of my dad talks at this point about social media, but I think everybody understands that, as they articulately said, there is a problem. And I feel for our students, it's always hard to be a 14-year-old, to be a 9th grader. It was for us, right? I think if you reflect back to when you were 14, it was really hard, and you probably tried to block it out. Now it's exponentially harder with society, with what they've had to deal with, and with social media. And the engineers of these algorithms and programs, I'm sure most of you have seen Social Dilemma. If you haven't, watch it, rewatch it, watch it with your children. It's not a fair fight. I mean, they are dwelling on mind control to get people looking at their apps and their phones. And again, I'm 43, and it's hard for me. For the undeveloped mind, it's really, really hard. The emotional response, these apps are built on the emotional response of people. And for teenagers, it's really hard to disengage. So to your credit for pointing that out.
Just one more thing on that, Nate. I think that's the issue right there, is the disengagement piece. I think when your kids are involved in that drama, and if you have a good relationship and they talk with you about it, you know, they'll say, like, what should I do? And I think our instinct is to say, well, put the phone down. And don't, you know, if you respond like this, it's just going to keep on going. But there's a lot at stake in that. If they put the phone down, now they either become a target in that regard, or they lose status. You know, that's the part about like delaying the phone as long as possible, delaying Snapchat as long as possible. You know, we tried all of those measures, and now they become ostracized because they don't have those tools. And so the conversations at the lunch table or in the classroom, on the bus or anywhere else, are around these things, and you don't have them. And so then there's, you know, it sounds awkward, but a bit of an equity issue. You know, like you're the only kid in 6th grade that doesn't have a cell phone yet. And so as parents, you're constantly fighting that argument. So the disengagement piece is not just a way, it's not just enough for us to say, put it down. We have to guide them through those conversations. We have to tell them, like the thing that resonated with me watching that video, I felt like I was having a conversation with my daughter, Ella, when she's reading, she will read to us exchanges, or that my one friend said this and the other friend said this. And you know, as parents, we're like, stop. You know, like the idea that they think that their friends are these trustworthy people, that they can say these nasty things about someone else, and that person isn't going to screenshot it and send it to someone else. So much of our investigations are based on screenshots. You know, and then Snapchat came along and they thought there's this miracle, it just disappears until somebody takes a picture of it and then sends it in to us. And now it's disrupting the learning environment. You have kids that are upset. They don't know how to conflict resolute anything. So we're working with social workers and psychologists and guidance counselors and all these people, trying to have them to sit down and actually just have a conversation. Well, I didn't mean to say that. I didn't want to be nasty. But they get caught up. And I think, again, that status thing, they feel like if I don't check what that person said, then it exists and I can't do anything about it. And that's damaged my reputation or my stature, et cetera. So then they feel the need to engage. I can't just not say anything, Dad. Yeah, you can, you know, or this is where it's going to go. You know, so it's hard to just say disengage. It's not enough. We have to help them through the conversations and understand, at the very least, like when you do that, you're not being a trustworthy friend. When you take screenshots and send them to your friends, at the very least, not participate in that kind of bad behavior. You know, it used to take at least a few minutes for a lie to get from one end of the room to the other, you know, the telephone game. Now it's like that. Or a fight, and everybody loves the drama. That's the hard part too. They'll all watch it. They'll all read the screenshots. They'll all watch the fight because that's what happened today. And then 30 seconds later, they're on to the next thing.
Did you want to say something? Yeah. It looks like you're...
So I feel like it's really scary, like, to think about that. Because, like, my mom always is like, oh, well, just don't involve yourself. But, like, there's kind of almost like a pressure to, like, send back and, like, get this app and, like, snap them and, like, post this. But, like, people don't really think about that. They're just like, oh, well, it's easy. Just put the phone down. But it's, like, harder than that.
Yeah. No, thank you for saying that. Did you want to...
I was just going to add one more thing about Snapchat, which is especially awful, is the map. So if you don't have it, there's a map that all your followers are on. So say, this is an extreme example, but say one kid doesn't get invited somewhere and they don't even know about it, but then all of a sudden they're looking at their map and all their friends are at one kid's house. So that's an extreme example, but they stare at that map. They know where everyone is. So during the summer, weekends, so ask your kids if they have Snapchat to have them show you the map.
They all have it.
They all have it. They all have it. I know. My kids have it too. And it's also worth and we're probably going to get to this, if your kids have Snapchat, you might want to make an account. And then you could see where they are on the map too. So it has its purposes too.
Just a reminder to you too, like as we're talking here, if there's any questions you have, toss them up there. Because I'm kind of thinking there might be some questions at this point. I'm going to keep doing some more stuff though, and then we'll take some time with questions. So again, we don't have a ton of time, but I want to kind of get into some of like the suggestions part. So this is the part I think you're kind of like, well, isn't this what we came for? So we have 4 main tips here. And I think what I'll do, panelists too, like just kind of quickly after each one, if you're kind of like, oh, I got something, just jump in. So the first one is to defuse and de-escalate. Tell kids to take a break and a breath before responding to drama. And this has already come up a little bit. It's not helpful for kids to just say, well, just ignore it. I kind of think it's a little bit of the equivalent of telling someone to just relax. Has anyone ever told you to just relax? How does that feel? It doesn't work. It actually makes you more like tense. So, you know, we need some strategies to tell someone to relax or tell someone to ignore something rather than just saying that. So one way to do that is to tell kids to just take a break. And, you know, every kid's a little bit different how you might do that. But I know with my kids, you know, even just simple things like we're kind of nature-loving folk. And even just like going for a walk and just getting away from them, like physically can really help out. You guys got anything on that? I keep rolling. Mr. Marcelli?
Yeah, just it's a continuation of the messaging that Coach Fitch came in, pause before you post, just a different way to say it. I think the more you can do a common messaging, a rhyme, a short and sweet pause before you post, take a deep breath. As Tegan said, it's really hard not to respond, but if you can train yourself to pause for a second and think before you respond, I think that would give you a more productive product if you can't totally disengage.
Thank you. Tip number 2. Where'd it go? There it is. Try the face-to-face test. Have kids imagine they're talking to someone in person, not just behind a screen. You know, there's this thing called disinhibition, where when someone's not a real person anymore, it's way easier to not treat them like a real person. And if you can really kind of like see that person on the other side, that's a really useful test for kids. Keep rolling. Yeah. Tip number 3. Encourage in-person conversation. Even though it's hard, it will resolve drama more effectively than online messages. So I don't know if you've been through this, but my kids, I'm kind of like, yeah, why don't you just give them a phone call? Like my kids, like it's like trying to give like like a bath to a cat, okay? They will like resist me. They do not want to do it. But it's amazing when they do it, it's so much better than just like texting. So this is kind of like a little bit of a lost art. You know, I remember like when I got a cordless phone, like you had to pull the antenna up. Do you remember these? I thought it was amazing. And I would talk on the phone for a long time. But like, it's so hard for kids to kind of like jump to that next level. So when you think about it, like just kind of like, I kind of want you already know this, but I kind of wanted to like make sure it's part of this, is when you think about texting, what part of communication is missing? Your face, your body language, what else? Yeah, that's what emojis are for. Yeah, your intonation, your voice. Like I could say to someone, sit down, or I could say, sit down. Big difference. And it's kind of funny, like I do this kind of like sometimes I'll have like a colleague who gets kind of like a grumpy email, and then I'll read it to them in like a really cheery, like, you know, Disney princess voice. And sometimes even just changing the voice of how I read things can make a really big difference. But I think, you know, like think about that, like how much people text now, like either through email or just like texting, and all of that communication that is now lost. I don't know about you, but I feel like since the pandemic, like my emails have just quadrupled, you know, like it's gigantic. And I miss the richness of those conversations you had with people, the like being able to read them, and then also I just like people too. So that's something I feel like we need to really help kids with a lot. Anything over there?
Yeah, I had a thought to add. I can't tell you how eye-opening a few situations I've dealt with. I've been AP and now a principal for a total of about 8 years. I'll deal with situations where students will have ongoing conflicts, nasty conflicts, sometimes months, sometimes more, where they're to the point of fighting, hurting each other, hurting themselves. And I'll say, when's the last time you talked to this person? And they haven't had a face-to-face conversation. It's all electronic. It's all electronic. And I think electronic information is processed information. It's just like as unhealthy as processed food. So getting them to the table to have a face-to-face conversation, our district is really, has been, but really focused on restorative conversations. So many of those are conflict, but they haven't had a face-to-face conversation. They may have seen him from across the hallway, but that's it. So trying to put some closure on that and to make it right and to have that awkward face-to-face conversation that should have happened like weeks and months ago, there's a lot of value in that. But to do that proactively, I think there's a huge opportunity there for all of our children to learn how to have that face-to-face conversation, even in the lunchrooms, like put it down and talk to your peers.
Just to add to that real quickly, the two things. Number one, part of the reason that escalates so quickly too is because there's so many people engaged in the conversation. It's not a direct one-to-one conversation where, you know, they can seek meaning. There's so many people cheering on the conflict. You know what I mean? Because again, it's fun to watch. You know, like let's whip them up, and then next thing you know, there'll be a fight in the school. You know, everybody's, you know, real tough until they're actually on the other side of that. And something that started off really small now becomes a fist fight between kids. And not to say that we have a lot of fist fights in school, we really don't, to be honest with you, but that's almost always how they start for us, is through social media posting and all these other kids that are pot stirring and just whipping it up. And do you hear what that person said? And it's back and forth. And if we pull those two kids out, usually I'd say 99% of the time, if we have any kind of inkling that it's going to happen, we can pull those two kids out and it's over. Because once they get in a room and have a conversation, or we de-escalate them, as you were talking about earlier, we're able to kind of find some resolution and move on so that they can, you know, be in the same space. But I think the other thing that I was going to add to that is holding up a mirror to our kids. A lot of times when we're processing these things with our teenagers at home, we're like, well, how would this come, you know, how would this land if somebody was saying it to you? The things that you're saying right now, would you want someone to say that to you? How would that feel? And a lot of times my kids can get there on their own in that regard, you know, just being a little empathetic. And so I think that would be something I'd ask you to do too, when you're asking them to take a time out and they're giving you the blow by blow and reading every text to you. Be like, you know, if someone had said something like that to you, how would that feel? Usually that question is enough for them to stop and reflect and do that pause before you post.
Thank you. Ladies, I saw you chat. Yeah, okay. I thought you might have something.
Okay, so one thing that's really hard, like even for me, is that like when people say stuff or like type it and you receive it, you tend to read it in a different way that maybe it came off. Like you tend to read it like more mean.
Yeah.
And so you're like, oh, well, you said this. And they're like, well, I didn't mean it to come off that way. But sometimes it still does. And that's how it escalates so quickly and gets even worse than it started.
So it gets back to that, like that reading voice too. So maybe even just like another suggestion is just kind of like read it with like thinking that people are saying something just normally rather than like with that kind of a negative, grumpy voice. Yeah. Were you guys say something?
I feel like also when people are in fights, they go to their friends, and so like it's more friend groups that are talking and not the actual people. So it just escalates a lot more.
Yeah, you kind of go to your tribe because you're kind of like, I'm safe in my tribe. I got my people around me. Yeah, yeah.
I know we're on a time crunch here, but as we're talking, I know we're talking through the lens of our students, but this is a problem with our adults too, obviously. The emotional response, social media dividing our community and our country. The why isn't just for our students, it's for our community and our country. I think we're all being manipulated by social media. So the more informed we are of our own reflection in the mirror and our own engagement with arguments and tribal mentality, the more we can come to the table and have conversations face to face. So I appreciate you being here and having those face to face conversations.
I just want to add like 5 seconds to that. I can't tell you about how many times in the last year I've gotten a nasty email or an emotional email from a parent that was upset about something, and I call them immediately, and they are just flabbergasted that I picked up the phone and called them. And I think that goes to what Mr. Monticelli is talking about. They're not expecting a conversation at that point. And I'll say, this is Mr. Clark, I'm following up on your email. I didn't expect you to call me. It's because I think people are used to taking that shot. Like I can say what I want in my email and I don't have to listen to whatever the exchange is, and I could just go about my day. And so again, I think that we apply those lessons to our kids and say, pick up the phone, have the conversation that Nate's talking about, or let's go in a room without all these people watching, where you're going to be embarrassed if you back down, and we'll just have a conversation and get to the bottom of this.
Thank you. Okay, last tip. Tip number 4. Help them take control, use settings and app tools to lessen drama with strangers. And what this is getting at, I don't know, like if you're a Facebook user, there's some feelings about that out there now. But like I remember one time I went into like the settings for Facebook. One, I felt like I was doing my taxes. Like I couldn't understand it. And there are so many different ways that things get shared. But you might want to take some time to like really go into the settings about like when you do share something, where is it going? Recently, my wife set up a blog, and there were some settings in there about like, well, who sees what and can respond to what. And it was really interesting. It was kind of a reminder to me of like, sometimes it's really important to kind of pull up the hood a little bit and kind of see like how things are being shared. So you might want to take some time with your kids to kind of say, when you do like post stuff, who's seeing it? Where does it go to? Do you even know yourself? Because some of these companies, they kind of tend more towards the engagement is really important. So they're going to kind of open things up by default, kind of wide open, and you might want to kind of squish it down a little bit. So I kind of want to give you some time. We're gonna run out of time. I might go.
Nate, I need a very, very quick add on to that. One of the things that we try to model, and I would ask you, to talk with your kids about, is turn off comments like on Instagram. A lot of the, to someone who has daughters, I don't know if you have daughters, the body shaming is probably the worst of that. And I think, unfortunately, this is the space our kids go to for validation. I can't tell you how many pictures my daughter takes of herself. It's a little frightening. And it's, to their point, it's about likes, things they talked about in the video. It's about how many people say, oh, you're beautiful. And I think it's well-intended. They feeling bad. They take a picture of themselves. Their friends say, oh, you're the best. You're beautiful. You've done this, right? And then some idiot starts commenting negatively. And so, like when we post on social media from the school, we turn off the comments because all it does is invite, idiotic comments. And then we have to pull those kids and say, listen, just so you know, we don't do that. We're not going to go back and forth. We're positing, we're posting positive messages. And so that's great if it's affirming and it's your friends and you're being positive, but that's how things turn negative too. So somebody that's having a bad day and a body image issue, they post a picture and it starts off pretty good. And next thing you know, by the end of the day, and I'm not being like overly like dramatic with this, now they're hurting themselves some way. They're cutting or they're, they're tearing themselves down and starting, you know what I mean? And that's where that kind of goes. So in that regard, turn off comments. You don't really need them. They can still press the like button.
So this is your time, and we don't have like a ton of time, but I want to give you like maybe at least 5 minutes to kind of process this a little bit. Initially, like we're going to use the handout, and you're going to write stuff, and then talk with a partner. We're just going to skip to talking to a partner because it's way more fun. So what I'd like you to do is I think it's there. Okay, yeah. So what I'd like you to do is like just talk with the same partner. What's like maybe one of these strategies, they're written down there on your notes, your handout, in case you forgot, like, wait, what was strategy number 2? What's something that would work for you in your home, do you think? And maybe you heard something else too from the panelists that maybe resonated with you that you'd like to do. But why don't you just talk with someone about like, what's one thing that you'd like to try? Go for it. Chat.
I think we can get those quick though.
Well, do you know about the Snapchat map? Can it be disabled? Yeah. You can have Snapchat without the map.
Okay, so it like tracks you when you snap someone. So like so last time you used Snapchat, that'll show where your location was, but you can turn it off or like only allow.
It's in the settings, yeah.
It's in the settings.
And no one cares if it's on.
You can also turn off notifications. That's huge.
Yeah.
Go ahead and just take like another moment here, like another 30 seconds. Another 30 seconds. If you would, go ahead and finish up your conversation. We're going to start wrapping things up here. All right, we're going to start up again. I'm going to cut you off. I'm going to be the mean guy. All right. Oh, okay, you figured it out. Good, good. Those parents know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. So, kind of briefly here, because I know we're going to run out of time soon. Maybe like some thoughts. Is there like someone who wants to kind of share out what strategy is kind of like emerging for them? I think people enjoy kind of hearing where other parents are at. I might just call on you too. I've done this before. Up. What do you think? Yeah?
I think just, I am interested in finding more time with my student, with my child.
Yeah.
It's uninterrupted.
Yeah.
And rather than me create that this is how it's going to be, because that's going to immediately, create resistance. Asking her, how can we make sure that this happens?
Yeah.
How often, when, and under what parameters, and like, where's that phone going to go? Mine has to go as well. If I'm going to ask this of you, I have to walk that walk as well. So put that. It can be a shared decision. She doesn't have to come up with the answer herself, but she might be more likely to follow through and be interested if it's around her own solution.
Oh yeah, for sure. That was beautiful. You said so much there. I was like going through all my bullet points. Just that idea, where their partner. Something else too. I don't know if you guys picked up on this too. Like for me, being in technology, a lot of times people are kind of like, I need a technology solution. And oftentimes it's like maybe a classroom management question. And they're kind of like, well, is there like some technology that would like solve this? And I'm like, you know what? This is just good old fashioned classroom management. And I think the equivalent here is this is just good old fashioned parenting. And it is. These are tough issues that take time. And they're watching us. They're watching how we do things. Because if I don't do what I tell them to do, like they take very strong note of it. Okay? Not as much when they don't do what I tell them to do. But it's really like a powerful I think it's a really powerful message too to kind of like let them know that we're also trying to figure it out and we're willing to kind of walk that journey with them. Maybe one more comment from the crew. Yeah.
I think something that we realized in our group, something we discovered was that a challenge for us as parents now, which is probably not unique to our generation, but a challenge for us is to realize that we have to model and teach things to our kids that didn't need to be taught and modeled to us. Like, why do we talk to someone in person versus when we text them? How to interact in appropriate ways in various circumstances that maybe was just natural to us growing up because we only could communicate in one way, but it isn't the case now, and we have to be intentional in that teaching as parents now.
I think in some ways we feel really overwhelmed because we're like, we didn't grow up with this. But in some ways, maybe that's one of our greatest strengths because we know what it was like without this. And like the ability to be able to communicate with people. Like I try to avoid things like, I feel like I'm dead. Like if I ever say back when I was a kid. However, if I can say something like, like this really helps is talking with people because I lived it and I know it. I think that really helps. So the panelists are really eager to tear into your questions. And I think they have it all set up how they want to do it. So you want to do it? Go for it.
I'm going to address the access one, and I know we all have our thoughts on this, but what I would suggest is if your child can be mature enough to set an old-fashioned alarm clock and wake up on time and brush their teeth, have breakfast, whatever, get ready for school, be on the bus on time, and they can consistently do that, they may be ready for a phone. But if mom and dad are doing everything for them in the morning and waking them up every 5 minutes, they are not ready for a phone.
I think my 18-year-old wouldn't have a phone still. I don't know. I was with you there for a minute. My wife calls that the 5-finger deal, but that would not work with our oldest. It's definitely a good idea. I'm going to start with the one that was addressed to me real quick, and then maybe just one other one. So, you know, again, I was saying in the introduction that my kids sort of suffered my experience as a school administrator. The thing that frightened me as a father, as my daughters got older, I have an 18-year-old and a 16-year-old, is, you know, the issues that they feel pressured into, young women feel pressured into showing their body to people and robbing them of their dignity. And so the things that my wife and I tried to talk about for years was that, you know, that's not something, you know, as a father, as a mother, our jobs are to protect them. And I can't protect them from what happens when that goes down. Like when you make that decision to hit send and send pictures of yourself in compromising positions, I'm never going to be able to fix that. I just want you to understand that. And so we talked about that a lot. And I lost this fight eventually, but I guess like through attrition, like I held off as long as possible. We didn't allow phones in their bedrooms for years. We made them charge them on downstairs on our island. You know, so when they head up to bed, because they don't sleep, their notifications pop off all night long, and they have it under their pillow. They are not sleeping. They're not getting a good night's rest. So phones were downstairs. Then the phones came upstairs and they went in our bedroom. And then we heard their notifications. And then finally, I think my wife gave in on that one when I wasn't looking. And the same thing happened with Snapchat and things like that. You know, I held off as long as I could because every issue we dealt with in school was related to Snapchat and to some of the insidious things that go on there in terms of like disappearing messages and you know, people again sending you know pictures of their bodies, and then they come back 2 years later. That's the thing that was frightening about that. Like we feel like we've dealt with it in middle school. Dave Dunn would share like that. We went through this situation 2 years later. We're dealing with it. Same exact photo, and somebody's had it and they're passing around. They don't even realize they're trafficking in child porn. You know, like they don't understand the legality of it. They don't understand, you know, all of the implications of it. So we, you know, the last part of that comment though is the part about acting like your mom or feeling like you're your mother by saying like I'm your parent. You know, we parent very differently than our parents. You know, again, my wife and I, both educators, you know, this is my almost 29 years for myself, my wife over 25, I think. And we'd like to think we're more well-informed. We've had so much training, so much, you know, TBM training, TCI training, all the things. And we have the same frustrations that you do. You know, sometimes I do it better in school than I do at home. So I don't want to sound like I've got it all figured out. But, you know, some of the things our parents did were absolutely spot on. And there's nothing wrong with doing things and saying like you're doing this because I said so every once in a while. It's okay for our kids to feel disappointment. It's okay for our kids to feel upset when we discipline them. I think we've tried to spare them from a lot of things. And again, there's, you know, sometimes I'll tell my wife because she's used to the middle school kid. She teaches 6th grade. And she, like my daughters, roll their eyes. And I'm like, yeah, big deal. I see that all day long. You know, so, but for her, it's like a lightning rod. And I'm like, you know, Jen, it's not the end of the world if our kids go to bed upset one night because you pointed out something to them and held a mirror up that they were rude or disrespectful or something like that. And so, you know, I don't mind so much when my kids say that. Yeah, I didn't spank them either. So I don't really mind saying sometimes like I said no and that's it. You know, I know that we're trying to be better versions of, you know, what our parents did for us, but at the same time, you know, you are the parent. They are the, you know, they're the ones that you can explain that later. You can have that follow-up conversation to say, this is why I said that. Sometimes in the moment, it has to be what I say. And then the other piece there, I have a 13-year-old boy at home. He deals with this drama just as bad. Sometimes it's through video games. I know that was in the definition of that. They bully each other all the time. So, yeah, I think that it's not germane just to girls. I think there's much more body shaming when it comes to girls. But no, I don't think it's just that. And then we gave our kids their phones at 13. We held off as long as we could. and we were the mean parents, but I was okay with it.
Yeah, well said. I know the girls are anxious to answer some of these, and they can answer it better than I. The access question, I think, depends on the student, depends on the child. It's like a car. I wouldn't trust, a car with some of my 18-year-olds versus a 15-year-old. But one really cool reminder for me last year's ninth grader, we were talking about these things, and she's like, yeah, my sister asked me to hide her phone from her during periods of the day. I thought that was really telling, but also really cool that she knew that enough about herself to ask her older brother to do that. So that to me is some control and understanding and taking measures to be healthy. The gender piece, yeah, we talked a lot about social media, but video games is a real problem. A quick story, my sophomore year in college, one of the first-person shooter games came out, GoldenEye 007. And I had a problem with that my sophomore year. My buddies and I would play that. 4 people could play that, right? And that was, I think, one of the challenging things with how brains are wired, that you can get really sucked in. I got sucked in, and my GPA dropped pretty significantly, and I came back, but I had to go cold turkey. I have not played a video game since my spring sophomore year. So there you go, a little look into Mr. Monticelli's world. But now I see my son, he's 7, and I see his brain change in front of my eyes when he's playing video games. And the smack talking starts at like 5, 6, 7. And one phrase or mantra I ask you to reinforce at home is words matter. I think so many kids will say mean things and pass it off as, I was just kidding. Well, that's not, no, we're not going to say those words. And there's healthy boundaries to go with that. And part of our why is, let's not forget, our kids and us, we were all disconnected from face-to-face conversations for 2.5 years. So that's huge for all of our kids and all of our adults in our community.
Okay, so we'll just talk about access first. So, I don't know, I got my phone when I was in 6th grade. But yeah, I like what you were saying about like getting up and getting ready. Like, I feel like that's a good start. But what do you think?
Well, I got an iPod in like 4th grade.
Oh yeah, me too.
And that we were so young, so we didn't really like do anything. We were just listening to music and stuff and playing games.
No social media, really.
Yeah. And then 6th grade is when I got a phone, and I liked the things she said, but I wouldn't have a phone because I have to set like 30 alarms, and I still don't wake up sometimes. So I feel like 6th grade, because middle school is kind of hard if you're not like connected with people that way. Mm-hmm. But it's all about the child, like the certain child.
Right. And then well, I had my phone for like connection with my parents mostly. Like that was mainly why they got it.
Most commonly used.
Yeah. Well, at first. And then I like sort of got social media in like 7th grade. And then that's sort of where it started.
I had the first app I got, I think, was Instagram, because I just like I don't know, I didn't even do anything. Mm-hmm. And then I got,
it's mainly Snapchat.
Yeah, I got Snapchat in like 7th grade. And then TikTok, I didn't like TikTok, so I just got it like when quarantine started because Tegan told me to. So, and yeah.
But about the gender thing, yeah.
Snapchat
can be disabled. It can.
Okay, you can disable like your location being on, mm-hmm. and you can also change who can see it. So like your friends, or like if you don't know someone that you have added, you can just not let them see it. But no one really cares.
Yeah. About the gender thing, I don't know. Girls like to run their mouths, I'd say. We like drama. We like saying, oh, she said this about her, so that's why they're not friends anymore. Like, I feel like that's more common for girls. But, yeah, guys definitely do.
I feel
face
like
it too.
The guys that we're friends with, they just, like, about, like, expressing their anxiety about social drama, I feel like they're more likely to talk about it if someone brings it up first. Mm-hmm. But I feel like they don't show that they're like as mad about it. or
Right.
anything.
And then for this new question that we got, yeah, social media is very addicting, like very addicting. I can go on my phone just to like set my alarm before I go to sleep, and I'm like realize I've been on TikTok for like 3 hours.
I feel like you can set time limits, but I always just ignore them. So, it kind of depends, like when, like what the time of year is.
What you're doing.
Yeah, and like if you have a lot of stuff, like not stuff to do, like chores, but like actual like events and stuff, then I feel like I'm less on my phone. And like in summer, it depends because sometimes I'm on it for like my screen time can be like 10 hours sometimes. But if I'm hanging out with my friends a lot and just doing stuff outside, then it's not that much.
Or if I have homework, then my screen time goes up because that's always more important than homework, you know.
This is awesome, girls. Like next time I'm walking the hallways and say, put your phone away, and I get eye rolls, I'll just send you two in to talk to them. Very well said. Very proud of both of you. I just want to add that piece about how addictive is it. I've heard it said, I've done a lot of research because this is one of my new addictions is learning about it, social media and video games. But it's like the way I've heard it said, it's like an extension of the limbic system of your brain in your hand and your phone. So it is, by research terms, just like heroin, just like crack. And I say to the kids, it's crack in your pocket. So, and I know that's crude in a sense, but that's a fact. And the algorithms and the apps tap into those emotional releases and the dopamines. So again, if you haven't done the research or watched Social Dilemma or watch it, it's eye-opening.